any minute. And tune in, and thank you very much. Okay, Shelton, we're ready to go.
How you doing? Good morning.
Hi. Let's get started. You want to tell a little bit about yourself after I tell about myself? Again, my name is Barbara Fair. I'm born and raised in New Haven, longtime community activist around social justice issues like policing and corrections, and all kind of issues that interest me, like violence in our community, uplifting our families, all of that. And so today I'm hosting for Tom. And so we're going to talk about some of those issues about what's going on. And so, Sheldon, if you can just tell a little bit about yourself.
Um, I'm a longtime resident of the city, New Haven. Um, I'm a long time. I'm a lifelong. I said long time. Lifelong resident of the city, New Haven. Long time youth mentor. I work in the construction industry, but my passion is working with the youth. I'm currently a martial arts instructor for children in the city as well, and pretty much just working with the kids and working with the youth and things of that sort.
Thank you. I don't know if you're not aware, but you're not on camera.
Am I not?
No, we see your couch.
Mike, are you really?
Yes.
No, actually, he is on camera, Barbara. I don't know why
Okay,
you.
now I see
I was
him.
gonna say I'm looking at myself. I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah, now
Okay.
I see you. Yeah.
All right. I
Okay.
just adjusted a little bit.
Okay. So, Sheldon, let's start off with an incident that I heard that's been in the news lately, at least on Facebook, about an incident at Hammonasset State Park in Madison.
Hmm.
A group of young kids were camping. And what have you heard?
Well, I've heard. Well, a friend of mine's actually, his daughter was at that trip, and I guess what happened was he received a notice the day after, saying that telling him, informing him that they had to move some of the children that were there because there were other guests there at the park that were they said something about racial slurs and things. And I also heard that someone urinated on the tent of one of the children from the Leap Foundation. So I just heard pretty much that there were people there bothering the children, shouting racial slurs and harassing them and things of that sort.
Oh my God. And so I'm assuming when you say racial slurs, these were African American and Latino children that were on a camping trip at Hammonasset in Madison.
Yes, pretty much. It was this. This was a trip. Where primarily kids, African American, Latino, and there was some white folks that were on the other side of the park that were also visiting there that began to taunt them with racial slurs. And there's also some reports that a child's tent was urinated on by one of
Wow.
these people.
And were the police called in on the incident? Because I haven't seen anything in the news.
Yeah, I didn't hear anything about the police coming or anything of that sort. I know that they just mentioned that they moved the children or that they left the park altogether, but I don't remember anything about the police showing up or anything of that sort.
Wow. And this is 2022.
Hmm.
Okay, post Obama. Okay. So let's move on. One important thing I'm going to mention now, and I'm going to mention again at the end of the show because it's so important. Election year. November 8th is the election. And one of the people I'm very interested in and watching the race is the race between Gary Winfield, who is our champion up in Hartford,
Hmm.
and a Republican candidate, Carlson, I think is his name, who's actually running against him. And
Yep,
so I'm asking people to get out there and vote. Don't take any election for granted.
that's right.
I think most people know Gary. They know what a hard fighter he is, how he champions for our community, and all the things that he and Robin Porter, if I have to mention her also, have to go through to support our families in New Haven. And so because people know that, I'm hoping that they'll make sure that they get to the polls on November 8th, because Gary will not continue to be in office if people are not out there voting for him. So don't take your vote for granted. Get out there like you did when Obama was running for office, and make sure November 8th you're at that polls. Make sure all your voting information is up to date so there'll be no problems at the polls. And let's make sure Gary stays in a position to do the powerful stuff that he is doing right now.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Another thing that's in the news is Lamont. Governor Lamont has been visiting New Haven. So let's talk about that. You know, it's election year. So here comes Lamont courting votes in our communities, you know, ready to do almost anything.
Yeah.
But let's talk about that. I know he went to selected organizations and spoke with them and made some promises. So just how do you feel about that period, knowing he's been in office for 4 years? How often have you seen him come to New Haven?
I've been seeing Governor Lamont around too much, especially in my community since he's been elected. It's funny because I was busy the day that he visited, so I didn't get a chance to see him. But I was seeing some of the commentary online concerning his visit, and one thing that you know that was pretty consistent was the fact that that he supposedly came into town and was in and out in the blink of an eye. So it pretty much sounds to me like, you know, pretty much the same thing when, you know, when these politicians are courting votes, they come and speak to people that they usually don't speak to and listen, you know, like Hillary with the kente cloth. I mean, you know,
and the hot sauce and
the hot sauce and and the Senate wearing the kente cloth and all that stuff. So it's pretty much the same political stuff as far as I'm concerned. But I feel like he's had a lot of time to make some real significant changes in this state, and far from what I can see, not at least in my community, he hasn't done a lot. So I don't put any type of value on him coming to the community and speaking. I think it's just another pony show.
Yeah. But unfortunately, there are people who I don't know if they don't follow his past 4 years, or they just, you know, they just don't know any better. I don't understand it, because when I read that the alders in New Haven had praised him, and especially his handling of COVID-19, it's just amazing to me. There was one alder who I read had asked him a question and about the significantly underfunding of urban schools. And in the article it said that he really didn't answer her question, but she would be voting for him in November. So it's stuff like that that gets me. I was reading the article about when he went to I think it's Concord, and talked to the people over there. I think it's Mr. Fleming that runs that organization. And I was watching the video, and as one person went to present, he said, "Talk fast. You know, I don't have that much time," which was insulting in itself. They're trying to present something to you about their needs in the community, and you tell them to talk fast because you didn't have much time. And then there was another woman who was getting ready to present, and he said, I got it. So she didn't even get to present. So it's obvious he really didn't have a lot of time invested in meeting. He came just long enough to show his face, act very concerned, make promises as he did 4 years ago, and then he was out of here. But my concern is always, even though he's behaving in that manner, are people still going to go out and just vote for him with no demands, just because he came to New Haven?
Yeah, unfortunately, when it comes to politics, they some of the votes some of these politicians can count on particular votes, and some of those votes are people that don't really truly follow the political landscape, aren't really familiar with their record and things of that sort, and they pretty much just is, they're there for theatrics and things of that sort. They see someone coming to the city, speaking to them, saying the right things, and they know that there are people out there that they can get votes by, with the very least they can still get their votes, so they can count on that every election, unfortunately. And
Yeah.
that's what they continue to pander to, you know.
Yeah. And I watched the video when he was at I can't remember the name of the organization, a Latino organization. And
Yeah.
it was, and to me, it was a whole different, it was no, I'm in a hurry, I don't need to hear from this and hear that, let's move everything. It was a much better attitude he had. And then one of the things he talked about, Jose Candelaro was asking him quite a few questions, which I was excited about hearing some of his answers. And pretty much what I heard a lot was passing the buck. Like if someone asked a question about funding for different projects, he would say, well, you have to sway your local legislators. So he didn't actually make any promises himself. It's like pass the buck on to the other legislator. He talked about the $250 child care rebate. And he also said that there's 150,000 jobs in Connecticut, but no one to take the jobs. And that he was focused on middle class tax cuts. Now, whenever I hear, legislators or any politicians, period, talk about the middle class, I always wonder why they never talk about poor people. It's always about we're trying to make things easier and better for middle class people. And so, and nobody seems to question that when they say that, like, okay, so what are you doing for the working poor? Yeah. So those are some of the things I got out of that. But I do have to give him credit. He's a true politician. There's a few things that he said he would do now is election time, which is going to benefit our community. And one of them is opening up the Barbell Club, reopening it. He's allocating $1.5 million to do that. The city has to come up with the rest of it, which I think is a little over $1 million. But the fact that this place has been closed since 2008, and now, all of a sudden, election year, he's granting us money to open it up. So I know you remember the Barbell Club. Can you just tell people that are listening that don't know about the Barbell Club, its significance in the New Haven community?
Yeah, the Barbell Club used to be a community center that was in the hill section of New Haven, and they basically it was a boys and girls club where a place where kids could go after school, and they had video games, they had basketball, they had racquetball, all these different activities and positive arts and crafts. Just a place that kids could go when they got from school till dinner time. A place just to not be in the street. It was open for many years, and I didn't even remember the year that it closed. I know it closed a long time ago.
Yeah.
And people have been talking about reopening that place forever, but no one has really ever listened. So I guess people, after a while, the conversation just pretty much faded away. But it's kind of interesting that they want to open that they're opening that now. Me personally, it's a good thing. I think it's a little late, a day late, a decade late, and a dollar short, because this was something that we were asking for a long time ago, to help to stem the violence in the neighborhood, just to give the kids somewhere else to be, as opposed to being on the street where they could be influenced by the gangs and the negative stuff that was going on. And that plea went unheard for many years. So I mean, it's a good thing that they're opening this up, but I'm just kind of wondering what impact it's going to actually have on the community. So I mean, I guess we just have to wait and see. But I think that money could have been allocated to a better cause for lack of a better word. But I guess we just have to see what happens.
Yes, I totally agree too. I think it's a good thing, but I am wondering with the way things are
Hmm.
in New Haven and how neighborhoods have decayed, and now we have this neighborhood against neighborhood kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like, it's
The significance, I don't.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, you got to invest more than that money right now. But these are all the little things that can get done when it's election year.
Yep.
Unfortunately, but at least there's hope for that happening.
Hmm.
So I guess we'll just have to follow it and see how it goes. Another thing I wanted to talk about, which was great for us, and I know election year had a lot to do with it, is our organization, Stop Solitary, have been trying to get a bill passed to restrict the use of solitary confinement in prison because we know of all the psychological harm that it does to people, the brain damage it causes, and then these people, young people included, just put back on the street after they've been tortured like this. And so we've been fighting to get that done. Now, the first year, we got the bill passed and we put it on the governor's desk and he vetoed it. He put in an executive order, which
Wow.
really had no oversight. So, there was nobody to monitor that anything was being done. Um, and so we came back this year and, few perfect timing. We came back this year and the governor found the need to sign the bill into law. So now what we have is we're working on this advisory board. And what we want this advisory board to be, these are going to be people in our community who have demonstrated interest in the well-being of incarcerated people. They've, some are doctors, attorneys. We have 3 people on the board that are either they've formerly incarcerated or they have family members that are incarcerated.
Yep.
And so I think it's going to be excellent board to provide oversight over DOC. And what this board will also do is will be responsible for finding and submitting names of people that would serve as the obs buds person. That person would actually go into the facilities, talk to people, inspect the facilities. They'll also be sitting down with the commissioner and talking about policies and directives that might need to change. And so we spent a lot of time vetting certain people that we know would be really, really good for these positions. And so 3 of the positions the governor has to choose. And we submitted names, but he's again working without including us on anything. So we're really not sure the 3 names he's going to submit, but we pretty much have a good board that we know will make a big difference in our community. And again, like I said, election year is the year to be able to get some things done.
Oh, yeah.
So we're excited about that. Matter of fact, one that hopefully the board will be up and going pretty soon, and we can start getting some oversight over Department of Corrections, something that Connecticut is one of the very few states that didn't have oversight over Department of Corrections.
Yeah, and one of the states that needs it most.
Yes, especially because we are such a segregated state. We're highly segregated, and our prison population is predominantly Black and Latino people. So I think that plays a role in why we don't get more people supporting us in getting oversight and demanding oversight for DOC, because maybe they don't care too much about the people that are inside. So we like you said, Connecticut needed it very badly. So we just want to say that, let people know that that's out there. Okay, I want to switch conversations because time goes by so fast. I want to talk about policing, which is another one of the things that I really invest a lot of time in. So I want to talk about policing in Connecticut and then zero in on New Haven. So recently we had the case of Mr. Randy Cox, who I'm sure everybody probably heard about the story. I'm sure you have. Would you want to talk about what you heard about the story of Randy Cox and New Haven Police?
Um, yeah, Randy Cox, from what I heard, is pretty much a story about a young man, a young black man who was being arrested. I don't remember exactly what he was being arrested for, but on his way to the station, he ended up being injured on the ride. The police claim that they swerved to avoid hitting something or something of that sort. And what ended up happening was he ended up flying headfirst into the back door of the police van. He was handcuffed, so he hit his head against the back of the van, breaking his neck and paralyzing him from the chest down. When he arrived at the station, he had been in the back, yelling for help and telling them, the police, that he couldn't move. When he arrived at the station, from what the cameras and things showed that they released to the public, he wasn't treated too humanely. They dragged him across the floor by his arms. They pretty much left him in the cell for an extended period of time with no care or someone taking care of him. So it looked like a pretty unfortunate situation with this man being paralyzed for the rest of his life, just being taken to the police station. So
yes, and subsequent to that, there was a rally in New Haven on it was earlier this month.
Mm-hmm.
And NAACP got involved. They brought in I can't remember her name, from Black Lives Matter, brought her in.
Tamika Vince. I can't remember. I'm getting her name.
Yeah, Tamika, yeah. So you know who it is. So anyway,
yes.
They brought her in to talk about police violence. And one of the things that was a little pet peeve for me is that there's so many incidents of police violence and police murder right here in Connecticut, and police violence is common in New Haven. Mm-hmm. And so my little pet peeve was, why weren't we putting New Haven Police Department on blast? Because we don't have to talk about, like Tamir Rice or Eric Garner or any of those people that happened around the country, because we have so much of that going on in New Haven. And I wish they had focused on New Haven and Connecticut, because otherwise it looks like Randy Cox case is like a random case that, a first for New Haven. And so I just, I thought about, way back as far as 1998. And I think you probably remember this one with Franklin Reed, the young black man that was in New Milford. And the police shot him in the back of the head, point blank range. They had the footprint of the cop's boot was on the back of his shirt, which clearly showed it was more like an execution. And he was convicted, but it was overturned on appeal, so there was never any jail time for him. Then I thought about, and a year later, 14-year-old Aquan Salmon was shot in the back by a Hartford cop. Then we can move forward. And there's so many in between that I can't remember them all, but these are the ones that stuck out for me. And I thought about in November of 2004, Mac Lucky, remember the senior citizen who was in the senior building? Yep. And he, it was a police officer who hadn't even been on the force 2 years. He had signed a lease to go into that building because at the time they were allowing police officers to live inside of some of these like senior housing, rent free, to provide protection,
security and stuff. Yeah.
Right. And this officer had signed the lease on November 4th. November 8th, he's already killed somebody. And it was a case that has never left my mind because, I've heard stories from so many people in the building who said that this cop was cocky from the day he first came into the building. And the whole incident was because of the level of cockiness. Supposedly, Mac Lucky was getting on the elevator and the cop came on with this dog. And he was saying, dogs are not allowed in the building. He was afraid of dogs. he got on that elevator anyway, and the doors closed, and a few minutes later they opened, and McLuffy's on the floor dead. And they claim he had a knife in his hand and had lunged at the cop with a knife, but of course there was no fingerprints on the knife. And again, nothing happened. Matter of fact, the officer's been promoted within the department. Then I look at a little closer in time, 2015, with the 15-year-old that was body slammed. Remember that during the St. Patrick parade?
The young girl.
Yes, young girl body slammed by the officers. Video of it. Then in the following year, your sister Holly was dragged out of a police car and abused and left bruises on her body for months. Nothing happened with that. The next year, I was actually assaulted on the green by several police officers. Nothing has happened with that yet. And then later on that year, maybe 5 months later, the young man who was on video being tased in a grocery store, he was begging them to stop tasing him, and they kept tasing him. And then 5 years later, here we have Randy Cox, and I'm sure there's so many stories in between. And so it just shows a pattern of behavior among police. While if we just talk about Randy Cox, we'll think, well, that's the first time that happened, and we'll make sure that doesn't happen again. And so people need to be aware that police brutality within New Haven and the state of Connecticut is a long history of it. It's not an anomaly, and it's part of the culture of policing. So that's leading me up to, we now have a new chief. And do you have any expectations that things will change? Yes or no? And why or why not?
Expectations. I would say more. More hope than expectations. It's a tricky thing when it comes to like police brutality, because it's more than just, a lot of people like to put on as if it's just like they present it like it's an act, like it's an anomaly, it's an isolated thing.
Bad apple.
It's a culture. Police brutality is a culture, and people would say, oh, there's just one bad apple or two bad apples. But the thing about that is, when it comes to policing, it doesn't. Every cop on the force doesn't have to be a bad apple to cause an epidemic of police brutality. It doesn't have to be even half of the police force. But it's a consistency and a contingency, and that's what we have going on in the city, like in New Haven. In here, what happened with Mr. Cox isn't an isolated incident in the least. Tragic in its sense of brutality. One may be able to say this isolated. You may not be able to find a lot of people that were paralyzed by the police.
Right.
But as far as people being brutalized by the police, that's a culture that's been going on in New Haven for decades, through many different police chiefs. So I don't really have, at this point, I don't really have high expectations. We haven't seen much. I have to see something different. Policing has changed with the times, but it's still police brutality. It may not be as wanton and reckless and lawless as it may have been at one time, but it's still police brutality. Today you have Randy Cox. Yesterday you had random people, period. You have to remember that there's also people that are assaulted and brutalized by the police that don't report, that never make reports, that have just become complacent to that. I remember growing up in the neighborhood, and particularly police officers that, for legal reasons, I can't name them, that were known to just come through neighborhoods and beat on people, and people had just become complacent. A lot of my friends, they would just take a licking and just go about their way and get home. They take their slaps, their kicks, their punches, and they just figured that was just par for the course. And a lot of times, a lot of these assaults and stuff never go reported. So it's just a culture.
Yeah.
So it's deep.
And I think the thing that bothers me so much, especially because I actually was a victim of that, is that people don't realize police violence leaves a deep scar on your psyche.
Mhm.
Um, what cities tend to do is maybe put them at administrative leave, which is a paid vacation, while they investigate. The investigation can happen up to a year, so they can get a paid vacation for up to a year, and then even at the end of that, nothing has to happen. And yet, the person who was victimized still has that scar, and many times cities just think throwing money at it is going to help you heal, but it doesn't help you to heal, and neither will the symbolic gestures that come after. Like, take for instance, the first course of action after what happened to Randy Cox is, okay, we're going to put seat belts in all the vans. What I heard in the news is that most places have seat belts in their vans. New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, and Waterbury don't. One might ask the question, why is New Haven, Bridgeport, Waterbury, and Hartford the only place that don't have seatbelts in their van? And see, that's the deeper problem that we don't talk about. We think, oh, let's put seatbelts in. We've helped. No, the work is so much more deeper, because you
Mhm.
have to get to the very roots. The foundation of policing in the South began as slave patrols. And what you see is what came out of those slave patrols, and it still flourishes today. So that's, like you said, it's a culture, and we don't do the real work, and that's getting to the culture. Now, I don't know if you've heard it or not, but lately I've seen in the news that they've been out recruiting, and the community trying to get more, I guess, African American Latinos on the force. What do you think about those recruits, and what do you think the impact will be? And well, maybe I'll ask that question first, and then I'll ask you another one. So, what do you think the impact of recruitment in our communities are going to do for the police force?
Um,
You see
it,
changes?
it, I mean, there can be some type of changes because you may have, if when you have officers that are from the community that they're policing, um, chances are that you'll get better policing. I don't know if there's any data or anything that shows that's proven that, but you would assume that chances are you get better policing. But the problem that remains is the culture.
Mm,
Um, if people are coming into a culture, it's kind of different. It's almost like um it's like a person, it's like me saying, hey, I don't think these gangs in the street should be killing people. So you know what? I'm gonna go join a gang and I'm gonna tell them that that's not right. And I join this gang. They're not gonna let me remain in this gang if I don't do the things, I don't, conform to
right.
their culture, and I don't become a part of their culture and I'm gonna have a lot of trouble in that. And you see it when you see good officers step up and report their colleagues that are committing crimes. These officers are ostracized, they're threatened, they
Mm,
lose their jobs and their careers. So that lets you know that there's a culture there. So I'm not sure how much impact that is going to do when a lot of times these officers have to conform to a culture that's already there. There's something that's already set up there in a blueprint. So I'm not sure.
mm.
I'm not sure.
And so having a chief that might have the mindset that you're talking about, "Well, I'm going to make change." How possible do you think that can happen, um, if you don't change the actual culture? How much change do you think can actually happen?
It's not much. Not much. If you don't change the culture, what you end up having is you have these modest gestures here and there, like with them putting seatbelts in the police vans, as if that would solve a problem. That doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't even speak to the problem of police
Right.
brutality at all. It doesn't even speak to it, let alone solve it. Um, because there are just so many other ways that the police brutalize and hurt the community than driving prisoners to jail in police vans. So um, until they change the culture, there's just not. It's just so difficult to to improve relations, and people just don't realize how much these things coincide. Relate police community relations, um, and tensions in the communities and things of that sort. They don't realize how much these things coincide.
Hmm.
So it's just it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that people don't see.
So, what role do you think, say, we'll talk about the attorney general who should be looking into these complaints of police misconduct,
Mhm.
prosecutors, state police, internal affairs. What is their role in all this, and how effective are they in ending police violence?
Um, from what they've, from what I've seen, it hasn't been as effective as it should be. And a part of that reason is a lot of times you have police investigating themselves, and
Mm,
that's always been a big problem. I think that every single police department, especially in communities of color, should have outside oversight, independent oversight. And not saying that that's foolproof, but I believe that it's just a big mistake when you have these police investigating themselves. You have states attorneys overlooking these cases. A lot of times they have relationships with these departments, these officers, professional and personal, and it just makes a huge conflict of interest problem. So I think a lot of these entities, they're there to serve a purpose, but um, they don't necessarily serve the purpose that they present themselves to serve. Actually, you know what I mean?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I know for myself, I always see them as all the same wings of the same bird,
Pretty
um,
much.
and and that's why we don't get the real justice that we ought to get. Um, I remember reading in 2018, the Supreme Court said that police do not have a constitutional duty to protect a person from harm unless they're in their custody. And it's the laws like that that provide this slippery slope to what their responsibilities are toward. Because we always say police are to protect and serve, but if constitutionally they don't have a duty to do that unless someone's in custody. I don't know why we believe in that and why we have that on that's the main narrative is that they're protect and serve. I myself personally, I see policing in different communities being policed differently. I believe maybe in the suburbs it is protect and serve, and that's why you see so many people in the suburbs that back the blue, support the officers, and their narrative is they come in every day, put their life on the line, run into danger, all of that kind of stuff. That's what you hear from the suburbs. But in urban areas, what I see policing is really about enforcing the law. It's not about serving and protecting anyone. And I think that's probably part of the problem also. So I'm just wondering how do we actually really get any kind of change, and even with a new chief, it just I don't know. I find it hard to believe that there will actually be any change as long as American policing is rooted in slave patrols.
Exactly, and that's the thing I was gonna say. People, they the mantra to protect and serve, but no one really said what protecting and serving is, and who they're protecting and serving. And people don't talk about how that mantra changes. The meaning of protect and serve changes. It means different things in different communities. Um, in our community, it more so means to protect the interests of those investors, to protect the interests of those that invest in our communities, not invest as in to improve our communities, but to make money from our communities and to serve them. You know what I mean? And it just means something different in other communities where it's to protect, where it may mean to protect the public and serve the public. Other communities policing seek to keep the people, keep danger out. Where in our communities, they try to keep the danger in because they feel that we are the danger, because that's part of the culture of slave patrols and policing in America. People of color are the danger. We're the criminals. That's why our neighborhoods are policed. That's why none of the neighborhoods that any of the white mass shooters were from are policed. None of them. And it's a culture of this country. And until that in itself is changed, police brutality will continue. And it's going to continue in this country.
You made me remember being at a public hearing one day and hearing a legislator say that police are the blue line that separate the suburbs from the chaos from urban centers. I couldn't even believe he actually said that publicly, but I'm sure that's how a lot of people see it. Like, we need this blue line to protect us from those crazy people.
Yeah, look at Hurricane Katrina, where you had a natural disaster come through predominantly black neighborhoods, flood. You had flood disasters. You had people dying. I think what was it? 180,000 people or something died in during, or 18,000. I'm not sure. Died during Hurricane Katrina. And as people were trying to escape the floods, police actually posted up on the outskirts of town and were and joined up with residents from the suburbs that had formed militias, and they were shooting at people that were trying to escape the flood so that they could survive. They wanted to keep everyone in the city where the flood was, and that's pretty much what they were talking about. They were the blue line that protected the suburbs from the urban chaos. So even at a time of a natural disaster, when people were dying, look at what they called the residents that were fleeing the flood, refugees. And they called us refugees in our own country. That there lets you know, and that came from the government. So that there lets you know how they view our communities.
Wow. Oh, I don't know. And I look at that the same way policing as I look at corrections, which is why I say a lot of my social justice work is around the same. Like corrections is the same kind of thing. It's like people probably feel like these prisons keep us from having to deal with those really, I don't know what they see, because like you said, if you look at where the mass shooters are coming from, they're not coming from the urban centers. So to me, that's the greatest threat to America. One of the greatest threats to America right now is mass shootings, that we can't go to church, we can't go to the movies, we can't go to the mall, you can't go to grocery store, you can't go anywhere and feel safe because of these mass shootings. And so how does the narrative come up that we need this blue line to protect suburbs from the chaos from the urban centers, when actually mass shootings are coming from the suburbs?
Ironically, in our communities, sometimes we can't even walk to the store to get something to eat without being harassed and policed and profiled. But the young man that committed a mass shooting in Highland Park, after he killed scores of people, he was able to go to McDonald's and casually sit and have a meal. You know what I mean? The irony in that is breathtaking. But that's American culture for you.
Yeah, and you see that playing out so much. Even like I've seen where there have been like 6-hour, 12-hour standoffs with police, right? And they're in the suburbs, and people come out of that alive. It's just just something remarkable about that. That people can. I remember the last one I believe was in Brantford, where the guy was actually shooting at police, and yet he held them at bay for hours. I think it was almost like 6 hours or more.
Mhm.
I don't understand it. And then someone like Tamir Rice, you're playing in a park, 12 years old with a toy gun, and within seconds of police coming approaching you, you're dead. And this is the difference between protect and serve, and seeing, I guess, people of color as being the most feared people, the people we most need to fear. In our community, over police all the time, getting pulled over. And I said maybe if they pulled over more cars in the suburbs, they could reduce some of these mass shootings, because that's where they're coming from. And these people have loads of guns. Their homes are full of guns, but yet you're pulling someone over in the urban community with the hopes of finding a gun. It's just an insane narrative to me that somehow continues to play out across this nation, not just in New Haven and Connecticut, but across this nation.
It's all part of the culture. You have to just think about something as simple but as profound at the same time as the war on drugs.
Mm.
Look at the destruction that drugs have done in poor communities of color over the last several decades, almost half a century. And there's documented proof that the government played a huge part of the infiltration of drugs in poor Black and brown communities. There has not been one person arrested yet. To this day, our communities continue to be flooded with drugs. Not one person has went to jail. The only people going to jail are the communities that these things are being brought to. They had proof that loads of guns were being dropped off in Chicago. They found crates full of guns being just dropped off there. Not one person has been arrested, but they talk about the violence in Chicago.
Mm.
It's all part of the culture. The police brutalize in communities where they know that there wouldn't be no repercussions, because the people that they're brutalizing, those above us hold no value to these people. I guarantee you, if police that were shooting unarmed Black men and women down in the streets were going to prison at the rate that Black men are going to prison in our communities, this epidemic would stop.
Yes.
But they're well aware. When you see cases like people like the killers of Tamir Rice and Philando Castile, who got pulled over and told the officer, "Hey, here's my permit to have a weapon. I do have a weapon in this car." Bang! He was shot and killed.
Yeah.
And the officers in a legal gun carrier was killed. And when officers see their fellow officers get off for things of that sort, it just it just feeds more to the culture.
Yes.
And gives them that sense of lawlessness.
Yeah. I want to quickly follow up on something that you were just talking about, the war on drugs, because we only got 1 minute. When we talk about the war on drugs, I look at the Sackler family from Greenwich, right there where Lamont lives, who distributed and all these opioids, thousands and thousands of people sick, dying every day.
Mm-hmm.
And not one of them, they have built wealth on distributing these drugs, but nobody calls them a drug dealer, and none of them have gotten arrested. That's Absolutely. The difference between communities and the narratives we have. What's the narrative for this wealthy white family building wealth, generational wealth on drugs that they distributed? Yeah. And yet look how many Black and brown people are behind bars for decades, and some for life, for doing the very same thing, distributing drugs. But this is American justice. And so the time is winding up, and I thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
For those who are listening in, my son and I have these conversations all the time. They go on for hours and hours and hours. And I said, how am I going to have a conversation with my son in 1 hour? But we know what, we managed to do it. So thank you.
Good job.
Thank you very much, and enjoy the day. And thank you to all those who are tuning in. Hope you learned a little bit. And don't forget, get out and vote November 8th. We need to make sure that our champions in Hartford remain in those roles where they can support our communities, because right now our Connecticut legislature is highly segregated, just like the state. And so we need all the support we can, and support those candidates who are putting themselves in the middle of all kind of chaos. Believe me, I'm there, so I see what they have to put up with when they're trying to fight for us. And we need to appreciate them, recognize them, and do all that we can to support them when they're running for office. Gary Winfield has a page up, so you can donate to his campaign. And so thank you very much again, Tom Ficklin.
As I got another rhyme, another rhythm for y'all to listen. I'm never quitting on my mission, I'ma roll with what I'm giving. Got some ambition, this new edition, filling positions. Looking at the void in myself and feeling what's missing. Better watch the way you going, better go in the right direction. In the moment you stressing, but you gon' be counting blessings. And I know that for certain, keep on working, open curtains. Haters swerving, cause they ain't ready for your final version. Whoa. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah. Cause this is my road, lights, camera, action, I'm ready to go. I'm never gonna give up, fall down, I just gotta get up, yeah.